The People's Republic of Karovia. Karovia is a grand socialist state with grand history. They're a member of the Comintern today, but they haven't always been communist. Let's uncover their history, a journey to 2500 BC, when Karovia was beginning to be colonized by various tribes settling in the region. Karovia, as an idea, didn't exist yet. 4,500 years ago, the region was just inhabited by the tribes of the Kai, the Sakai, and the Amone. They began to migrate south from the regions of the north, which is known modern day as Abyssinia. The region of Karovia is between two halves, split by large mountains, or refer to each unique half as West Karovia and East Karovia. The tribes were known across the continent for their forgery and art. All wasn't well though, as the tribes that were once unified began splitting off and developing separately, eventually creating the Sakai civilization around 1000 BC. The Sakai existed along the coast and they specialized in fishing. They didn't only specialize in it, but sorta relied on it altogether. They weren't only known for their fishing, however. The Sakai had complex castles for their leaders, and their polytheistic religious belief was extremely developed for its time. By 700 AD, after nearly 2,000 years of peace, Christianity arrived in Karovia. It came from the east, of course. The spread of Christianity also was what formed the Christian kingdom of Edis. This lasted a good 150 years before the Slavs of Khazar arrived on their horses. And when they did, they crushed and conquered the Christian kingdoms of Karovia. This dark period of Karovian culture only really began in 980, when the Christians of Karovia mysteriously vanished. Eventually, this gargantuan Slavic state fell apart, leaving the only Karovian state to recover being in the west. It was still Slavic. The Slavic culture continued expanding though, even without a singular state. By the 10th century, what was left of the Karovians had to migrate to the lands of the east, across the mountains. Due to the mysterious vanishment of the Karovians, the historic tribes of Karovia were largely killed off. Those who didn't fled away to the kingdoms in Allegria. The Slavs formed 5 kingdoms and shared the land amongst themselves. This didn't last too long because the Slavs slowly converted to Christianity and eventually founded 5 new kingdoms, this time centered on Christianity. These kingdoms were known as Vendeci, Alonia, Karovia, Rus, and Spria. They were, despite being similar in religion and culture, in constant conflict. The nobility were constantly waging wars. By 1453, the borders now looked like this. That massive kingdom isn't even a kingdom, but a commonwealth of 2 kingdoms. The Commonwealth was a ruthless power who was commonly known as a destroyer of civilizations. Eventually, the Commonwealth officially united into a colossal empire known as the Karav Imperium in 1684. Due to the strictness of the empire, famines and starvings weren't uncommon, and happened several times on several occasions. And this didn't end in the 1800s when a population boom happened. The aristocrats of Karovia didn't stop the starvations, but they did make factories to make life easier. For the upper 0.00000000001% of the population. The rest of the Karovians still lived in, now worse, in poverty. Now, instead of working on plots of land, the population got to work in factories, which was far worse. The factories commonly had poor working conditions, which made workers sick, and that sickness spread, which led to numerous plagues in Karovia. These factors and the ever-growing aristocracy of Karovia led to the revolution of the workers. The revolutions weren't at first too successful, and were always met with the iron fist of Karovia. Now, with more technology, man-made famines, aka genocides, were commonplace. Life got worse and worse in Karovia every passing day, but the protests didn't stop. The Committee of Karav rised against the chaos. The Committee of Karav was a communist group of writers and politicians who became keen with the idea of communism. This was the driving force that led the monarchy into the mud. They orchestrated huge riots, and the riots eventually turned into full-scale war. The elite versus the workers. This began the Karav Civil War. Several more orchestrated genocide and famines occurred, which obstructed the workers' victory, but these were only temporary halts, and before no time the workers of Karovia eliminated the monarchy. In the recent years, Karovia has experienced good relations with its neighbors as well as itself. They officially joined the Comintern in 1912 and have since been investing in oil and trading.